Hello, everyone, and welcome to Strictly Speaking, our conversations with theater makers. My name is Jayme Mellema, and I am the resident scenic designer for University Theater. And tonight we have with us scenographer Rob Eastman-MULLINS. Thanks so much for coming tonight, Rob.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
I'm glad to see you. This is a great excuse to talk because I feel like I haven't seen you in ages. Rob and I have known each other for 16 years,
Some years.
Which is a while now.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that, but yes, I guess so.
I know, right? How are you doing? How are things going at Wake Forest?
Not bad, actually. Better than I expected. All things considered. Me personally, I can't complain with what's, I've got it easier than some in this period. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
Wake is doing pretty well. They've done a really good job of opening and keeping people safe during this. So between us, I was pretty sure we would all be gone in 4 or 5 weeks and go back home. And we haven't. They've actually done a really good job. So
that's wonderful. So along that line, do you have, I know, like other theater projects you're still working on, or did everything cancel, or where is that at?
I have nothing theater project wise to be working on. The Department of Theater and Dance is doing, they've done one audio drama series that they released a couple weeks ago, and we're about to release another devised work, again, all virtual Zoom related, and I have nothing really to do for them, which is actually fine for me because it's not the media that I'm used to working in. And then so yeah, nothing else going on. It actually is funny though, because it seems like I'm busier. Part of that is through teaching right now because of the way we have to teach. Part of that is because the organizations I'm involved with, suddenly people have a lot more time to send emails and plan things. And so I feel like I'm busier than I might otherwise be. So I'm kind of glad I don't have a show to work on right now.
Yeah, I had similar actually for me. Yeah, been busy doing all of these kinds of things. It kept me pretty busy.
Yeah.
So you identify as a scenographer, which is not something everybody in the States identifies as. Can you explain what that means in case folks don't know?
Sure. I mean, it actually means different things to different people around the world, because it's not a term we use much in the United States. And the reason I have adopted it for me is because I design in multiple disciplines. I'm not a scenic designer. I'm not a lighting designer. I'm not a costume designer. I do all of those things, sometimes at the same time, sometimes separately. And so just to say theater designer is kind of, it's not a horrible term, but it's a little vague in a way. So scenographer is just a term that I have adopted from the rest of the world in a way to say that I do more than one discipline. If you go to lots of different countries, they'll use that term simply to mean, could mean just a scenic designer, but almost always in other countries, they're designing scenery and costumes. They're, and they'll if there's a scenography degree, it's often doing both scenery and costumes. And lighting is often a separate thing, but not exclusively. So I came to adopt that, and I've tried to kind of get that to be more of a term we use here. And funny enough, with one of the organizations I'm a part of, an international organization, they've actually gotten rid of the term scenography in favor of performance design. Just to kind of open it up from just live theater, more like live performance in general.
So more vague.
Yeah, but more inclusive, but more vague. Yes.
Yeah. Because they're talking about things like, what kinds of things are they including? Well,
it can be almost anything, because the way the rest of the world approaches theater is often very different from what, we're kind of conservative, really. And so immersive theater, which of course is more of a thing here as well.
And for sure.
In a lot of cases, what would be called performance art, what we might call performance art, where scenographers, where designers aren't so much designers as much as theater makers, and they are creating these performances as well, not just in our traditional actor, director, designer relationship roles either. So, so performance design was adopted to try to include all of that in there as well.
Are you gonna switch now?
No, I'm not. No, I will say I will often use the phrase performance design or performance. I don't use the term performance designer, but performance design I have adopted more now. So
Yeah, that seems like a good general term. So you 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 do a lot of different things, right? Your scenery, costumes, lighting.
I tell people I'm a scenic, lighting, and costume designer in that order.
In that order. Okay, that's what I wondered. Do you have a favorite? I mean, I guess in that order.
Well, well, the reason I say in that order is because that's in that order is what I get to do the most. So I mostly do scenery and lighting, and then I occasionally get to do costumes. I definitely prefer scenery overall, but I actually like designing costumes, I think, more than I like doing lighting. I just don't get to do it as much.
Right.
And the reason I don't get to do it as much is I don't build costumes. I can sew. I've been trained a little bit in the making of costumes, but it's not something I regularly do. And so when you're starting out in your career,
right,
you're asked to make the things that you are designing, and that's true in all the disciplines. And with costumes, that's not something I could offer people. So I take those opportunities when I can get them.
Right. Okay. Do you approach them differently then, like as a designer in terms of the process?
Not much. They are different processes, but my process is largely very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Script analysis. I lean heavily on character analysis. To me, I am to throw out another term that I don't use and is kind of vague, but to me, all theater designers are environment designers. We're all designing environments for these characters to inhabit.
Right.
The costumes are the most immediate environment. The scenery is kind of the most obvious environment, and then lighting and sound, and now of course projections and multimedia are a little more ethereal and atmospheric and less concrete. But they're all environments for these characters to live in, and it is my personal approach and belief that you have to know these characters to create any of those environments. And so that's something I harp on with my students. It's something I try to do in my own work so I focus on character in analysis. I go to research, which is one of my favorite parts of the process. And I do the same general type of research for any of the things that I'm doing. Terms that I did not coin, but I use and I have put out there in the world. So hopefully other people are using them. My students are using them. But connotative and denotative research. So denotative being real stuff. And so obviously that's where it starts to diverge is denotative stuff for costumes is what are people wearing in this period or in this location or in this moment. And for scenery, it's architecture and it's furniture and real stuff. And then for lighting, it's again, it's a little more ethereal, a little more atmospheric, but you can have lighting fixtures and time of day, stuff like that. But the connotative stuff is what I live for. The connotative stuff is, so it's the way I feel about the play. It's an instinctual search. It's not quite a random search, but it's, I actually, as a matter of fact, I full credit where credit is due. One of my favorite sources is Sculpture Magazine.
Yes,
which
I did as well.
I know you have, because Jayme Mellema is the one who turned me onto this magazine. I have a subscription. And I love it. I love it because it's already in 3D, right? It's sculpture. So as a scenic designer, I'm creating in 3D, and the stuff that I find in there is already in 3
Yeah,
years.
and a lot of times there's great environment and like installation kind of spaces, not just like physical objects, right? Sometimes it's also space. So
Yeah,
yeah, we also use those terms here at our school. So um,
yeah, so that's where, to me, the connotative stuff is where the ideas come from,
oh
and the
man, me too.
denotative stuff comes afterwards. If I
Yep.
need a door, then I'll go look for a door, and that's probably
Right.
how my process has changed over time. Is, when I was a young designer, I'm going straight to the denotative stuff, and
Yeah.
now it's like, okay, I do that if I need it.
Yeah, I have felt like I've gotten lost in denotative stuff before, where it's just like I get so caught up in those details that like it pulls me off track sometimes. So I have to watch myself.
And I love those details. I mean, I'm
Me
a
too.
architecture and furniture buff, and I've taught
Yep.
the history of architecture and furniture, and I love that stuff. I don't use it nearly as much as I train to use it, just because of my
Right.
design aesthetic and my what appeals to me.
Yeah, I like to use very real things in abstract ways. It's kind of how I sort of elevator pitch what I do. All right, so how did you first get involved in theater?
Well, I mean, so the story between when I first got involved in theater and where I am now is really long and
Sure.
long enough for this, and far too boring for anybody who doesn't know who I am. But the simple answer was, I started as an actor.
Okay,
and
yeah.
I got into that completely by force. Actually, my neighbor across the street was a singer, and he was like, "Hey, I'm going to go audition for this musical at school." I was in high school. I was in 10th grade, and he said, "Come with me." He wanted some backup to be there, and I was like, "No way, I'm not going to do that." And my mom had always tried to get me into theater and doing stuff, and I don't perform on command, and I just was no, I'm not going to do that. And somehow, I still to this day don't know how he convinced me to go. He and another girl who lived across the street as well. We all lived in this cul-de-sac, and we all went, and we all got cast, and that was it. So I'm not going to use I'm not going to use that word. Sorry, I was going to use a phrase that everyone says when they do their first show. But I got bit by that thing, and so. But I did leave the theater for a while too. So
yeah. What brought you specifically to design then?
So left theater, left college, and I went back to get my undergrad degree. I wanted to open my own theater. I had a management career. I was making really good money, especially for how old I was. But I kind of one day was like, this doesn't mean anything, what I'm doing. I was working, I won't go into the details of what I was doing, but I was like, who cares about this? And so I wanted to go back to theater, and I wanted to open my own theater. And I had come close to that earlier, a number of years before, but it taught me what I didn't know about it. So I decided to go back to undergrad to get my degree, and I wanted to learn everything there was to know about theater. And so I took every single class I could. And one of the early classes I took an intro to design class, and then the next semester took a scenic design class. And I had always been a good drawer. I won't necessarily say I was a good artist, because those are two different things, but I was always a good drawer. I did consider myself an artist when I was young, but I hadn't done it for years. And so when I took that class, and I also was naturally good with space, I'd considered architecture at some point as well. I drafted in high school and stuff like that. All these things are kind of related, but I didn't know it. And so when I got into that class, I was a natural. And because I was a natural, everyone thought I was there to design scenery, to be a designer, which I was not. And so students started saying, "Hey, will you design my show for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And so just started doing more of that. Took the design classes because I was taking all this stuff. And my mentor, I had a couple of mentors there, but I thought it was gonna maybe go to get an MFA in directing or something like that. And he said, you can do that. He said, but this thing you do here, he said, you're good at it, and you will never want for a job. And he said, you can always direct. And so I don't know if that's true, but I followed that, and it's not like it's a compromise. I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. So I did that.
I feel like I had that exact same conversation in undergrad. Like I was like really interested in directing as well, on top of, you know, doing design, because I really love design, obviously. But yeah, someone said, you know, maybe you should focus on this because you're really good at it. And I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah, I've never regretted it. I still do have, you know, I like creating the theater. I like creating the art. And
Mhm.
so, and I have had the opportunity to direct. I have had those opportunities. It's been a long time, and I do enjoy that part of the process. But
Mhm.
I also really enjoy this part of the process too. And I often wonder, we have a mutual, I think you know him for, you know, Mark Parolo, who is
Uh-huh.
a scenic and costume designer who is doing he's done a lot of acting always. And now he directs as well now too. And I always wonder how it is for him as a designer, because he's such a talented designer.
Yeah.
And he's so specific in the things that he wants.
Yeah.
I often wonder how he is as a director with
Uh,
that, you know, letting go of that, or, you know, so
I didn't realize he was doing that now. That's fun.
I don't know if he gets to do it as much as he'd like to, but I know he
Right.
enjoys doing that.
Right. So over the years, it seems like you've kind of taken a lot of leadership roles, and we'll probably talk about a couple of different things like that. Right now, you're, what is it, associate chair?
Associate chair of the
Um,
Department of Theater and Dance.
so is management and leadership, I mean, something you sort of aspired to, or is this something you just kind of fell into? It seems like wanting to own your own theater means you might be interested in management.
So my undergrad degree is in theater and theater management.
Okay.
I don't know that I've ever really lusted or you know, after leadership roles.
Mhm.
They almost always just kind of come to me, and this includes back when I dropped out of college and was working. I started out working for a temporary agency that then I got hired by a lighting company, not a theatrical lighting company,
Right.
commercial lighting. I was an electrician.
Mhm.
It's hard for me to talk about this without sounding a bit like
Sure.
like I'm going to sound, but I was smart. I worked hard.
Mhm.
I could string sentences together and I could speak, you know, and so, which by the way, speaking in front of a group, working in a group, there's a few others for all the college students. You need those skills in every single job. So learn
Yeah.
those skills while you're here. Anyway, so they promoted me within that company. And the next thing you know, I was, you know, working in management, and so I think it's just had a really good work ethic, and I'm not uh, I'm not an idiot, you know. So uh, and sometimes maybe that's just harder to find than you would like to think. But I also will say I also kind of gravitate towards those things as well. It's not like it's an accident. It's
Right.
I have ideas that I think can improve things.
Mhm.
I I don't mind putting those out there, and so I think that's and also I won't say I've gone after those things necessarily, but I've always been there. That it's a cliche, but that whole, you know, whatever it is, 90% of the job is showing up. Getting involved in USITT, the United States Institute for Theater Technology, which I'm involved in the Scene Design Commission and the International Activities Committee for. The first time I got involved was I went to the Scene Design Commission meeting, and I went up and introduced myself to the person who I actually replaced here at Wake Forest, and
Right.
he happened to be the Scene Design Commissioner at the time, and you know, we just started chatting, and at some point he's like, "Hey, do you want to do this portfolio review? Do you want to oversee portfolio reviews?" I said, "Sure, that'll be great." And then it's just, you know, the next thing there, I'm being asked to do this and being asked to do that. And
Mhm.
so, yeah. And same thing has happened with
So,
Ostat. I did actually throw my name in the ring for my involvement in Ostat, I will say, because I have an interest in international theater. I have an interest in
right.
scenography, which is what it was called at the time. So
Right. So can you tell us a little about what Oyster is?
Oyster is, and I, you know, even when I type this like in a email, I will go to the website and make sure I get it right. But
Right.
it's Ostat because it's the original is in French, so the words are not in the same order. But it's the International Organization of Scenographers, Theater Architects, and Technicians. I think I might have got that right.
Wow.
And it's kind of like USITT in a way, but for the world. And it's headquartered in Taipei, and the president is Dutch, and it's similar commissions to USITT. I'm the chair of the Performance Design Commission, with nay the Scenography Commission, and also the co-chair with a lovely British friend Fiona Watt, who of the Space Design subcommittee. That's another, we didn't even talk about space design.
Space design sounds so futuristic.
Space design, I know it sounds so much more exciting than it is. Space design is really the Scenic design subcommission, and so there are different events that they sponsor or come together as a group. There's usually an annual meeting of these different subcommissions. I was supposed to be in Cairo last week for a conference, for this conference, and get together, and they do workshops and talks and designer talks, and so they ended up doing it virtually, which turned out not too bad. So I got, in fact, just this past week, a session that I led, that I put together. I had a Moroccan scenographer and a Egyptian sound designer and a Cypriot lighting designer, Greek costume and Greek scenographer, and a Spanish scenographer, all in this session. And and they're all great people and really interesting. So yeah.
Is language an issue then in that situation, or is pretty much like everybody speaking English?
Not for me, because I speak English. English tends to be the default language, and so it's an issue for non-English speakers, and it's something that we're trying to address. And so actually, I was so lucky. I got really lucky because so my Moroccan panelist, his English, he's not confident in his English, which is what I find is often the case. It's probably better than he thinks it is, but he's not confident in it. But so he speaks Arabic and he speaks French, and so at the very beginning of the school year, an incoming first year who was interested in theater came on my radar from Tunisia, and he's actually in Tunisia because he couldn't come because of COVID.
Right.
And so I was like, hey, do you want to translate for me? And he said, sure. So we brought him in, and it was brilliant, and everyone loved it because in all these Ostat meetings and workshops and all that, usually it's in English, and you've got people struggling, not always struggling, but struggling through the language, and it's not their native language. And here for I won't say the first time, but for one of the rare instances, we had this guy talking about his work in his native language, and people have just loved it. So we're in January 9th, I believe, we're going to do a virtual meeting of the space design subcommission. So we're going to do a Zoom meeting, and we're bringing in these Egyptian shadow puppet group, and trying to see if I can't get translator for that so they can speak in their native tongue.
That's really cool. If people are interested in Ostat, like how do they get involved, or what are some ways to get
Excellent question. Yeah, that's always the question, and that actually comes back to kind of the showing up kind of thing too. There's like not like some barrier of there's no secret handshake or anything like that. I will say, for anybody who is a member of USITT, you are automatically a member of Ostat. It's a reciprocal. USITT is an Ostat center for the United States. Therefore, every single member of USITT is a member of Ostat. There's also, you can also be an individual member where you pay, a couple of euro and, but essentially showing up, and now showing up is becoming easier because it's hard to say, hey, all you got to do is show up, just come to Oslo. you know.
Right.
So that's difficult. But now that we're starting to be forced to do this, we're getting a lot of international, far more participation with people from the Philippines who we don't get to see that often, and like I said, from Northern Africa, and you know, the East Asian population can play more, you know, because it's a big world and it's a small world, but it's an expensive world to move around in.
Right.
And so, so yeah, the space design subcommission virtual meeting, it is for Ostat members.
Right.
But I'll be shocked if we didn't allow people to show up, because we just want to do the work, you know. We just want to, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get, like, I've signed up, I get all the emails from them and everything, but I'm not actually paying member.
Are you a USITT member? I know you have been, like, for
I have been, but no, I think our membership is like a school, like university theater membership, and I'm not sure.
I think
We've kept it up to date all the time, but we might.
Yeah.
We have people go periodically, so
no one's checking cards at the door at these meetings. I can tell you that it's probably Oystat's biggest mistake, but you know, it's, you know, they're pretty open.
Yeah.
Oystat.org, which is about to go through a change, and so hopefully a lot of that information will be easier to find for people.
Yeah. And one of their big things that they do every so many years is the World Stage Design, right?
Yes, yes.
And it's like a big exhibition.
Yeah, it was scheduled to be in Calgary this coming August in 2021. It's been delayed to August of 2022, and it's a open expo where designers can submit their work, students can submit their work. There are workshops, there are seminars, there are panel discussions, and all that. It's great. First one I was able to go to was in Cardiff in Wales, and it was excellent. The next one that I went to was in Taipei, which they, like, Wales set the bar and then Taipei set the bar. So and so I'm, you know, really looking forward to finally being able to get to Calgary.
Yeah, me too, because I feel like that feels more accessible to being able to actually attend.
Yeah.
I'm planning on submitting, so we'll see what happens.
Absolutely, doesn't hurt at all.
Cool. So I don't know. I've always thought of USITT and things like Oyster as really amazing resources for students. And going to USITT when I was a student was kind of an amazing experience. I don't know if I have a question there.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll throw you a bone, then I'll help you out, because I think you're right. The one thing that I encourage students to do, and I've taken them over the past number of years now, is the Prague Quadrennial, which is another expo, cleverly named Quadrennial because it happens every 4 years.
Yep.
And it takes place in Prague, also cleverly named. And I went for the first time in 2003, and it changed my life. It changed the way I look at the work. It changed my interest. It changed the way I do the work, I think. And it's in Prague, which is a brilliant city as well. So next one is 2023.
Wow, that's not that far.
If all goes well. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I went in 2007, and it was amazing. I think we both did work in it that year, didn't we? No, maybe.
No, I didn't have it that year, but we did hang out in Wenceslas Square together.
I remember you being there.
Yeah.
But you had work in the Quadrennial, the last one, yes?
I did. Macbeth, my design for Macbeth was selected for the Quadrennial, which was quite pleasing for me. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. That's really cool. Can we pull up? Let's pull up some Macbeth pictures real quick. Yeah, I loved this design when I saw it.
This is one that I was really happy with. It didn't, like all design, like, I could have continued to make it better, and it wasn't quite. And doing this with the yarn was extremely tedious, and we're always working under time constraints, you know,
Sure,
and,
yeah.
and so to get it exactly what I envisioned, it didn't quite come together, but I was still quite pleased with it. And I
Yeah,
guess luckily for me and other people were, so it was selected for the quadrennial, which
that's really great.
it
I
does,
mean,
yeah.
it's kind of a big deal for in the scenery land.
Yeah,
Well, in design land.
yeah.
It's not just scenery. In some years, they've only really chosen like the really high. What do I want to say?
Like kind of the
There's like
jewels
a
of the crown, jewels of the
yes, like
U.S.
the
crown.
flashiest,
Yeah.
flashy designers, like Broadway only kind of stuff, and so it's nice to see that they're choosing other things.
Well, they went to a more blind selection process a while
Oh,
ago.
okay.
So I think that makes a big difference, because we could just bust out all the Broadway stuff and like high end regional stuff we do, and it would be really cool. But there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff. To me, the coolest stuff is happening at smaller places anyway.
Right. Yeah. So we've got a question from Jackson. They're asking, what do you feel are the greatest challenges you face in the process of executing your artistic visions?
Oh my God, Jackson.
It's a big question.
How dare you ask me that in public, where I have to say that about the greatest challenges in executing the artistic vision. Well, so there's always challenges of all kinds. There's always limitations. And what I tell my students, and the way I try to work as much as I can, is I design what I call blue sky first. And I tell the students, design blue sky first. This is what you want. Figure out what it is you want your design to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then figure out how you can get that design given time, budget, skill, you know, because all of those things are limitations. Skill of your shop. You might, you know, you could be working at some private school summer camp or whatever, and they, you know, they're using all junior high kids to build it, and your idea of having a gigantic foot, you know, stomping on a chess piece or something, okay, how are we going to do that? And so that's one of the challenges, right, is realizing that vision. And if you have the money, you can do it, but if you don't have the time, you know, I mean, the whole you know, time, money, no, good, quick, cheap, choose.
Yeah, time, money, and quality.
Choose two. It's gospel truth in every single industry.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge. I almost always, and because I guess because I do design out here, blue sky first, something is going to always fall away. That's not, you know, crucible. You know, I wanted to do these twisted rope trees. I think we have some cute crucible images, possibly.
Oh, yeah.
The whole design was done with rope, with making the shape of this, of Proctor's house here. And we had like the attic, the eaves of Paris's house made out of rope. And what I really wanted to do was do these twisted rope trees for the outdoor scene. And I mean, it really would have helped complete the design. It would have been sexy. It just, you know, we just didn't have the time to do it, and not the money to throw resources at it to create the time to do it.
Right.
So something like that always falls apart. But if you try to adhere to the overall artistic vision and keep the stuff that's core to the design, then it, you know, then it will hopefully take care of itself. So I hope
I talk about it in terms of the idea, or the concept is like, if the concept is great, then it could be just about anything in terms of the scale and the quality and all that stuff. Like if the concept is strong, it can support the work in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different sizes and scales.
Yeah. And that's the thing, trying to hold on to that. So for Crucible, it was all about the giant cross/marionette controller and the rope that was associated with it. Like that was most important to me.
Right.
And so we kept that. So so that was a good question from Jackson. There are so many other things that obviously.
Oh yeah, but I think
distilling
it down to like the idea of being able to understand what your limitations are. So like of those three, what is the equation that you're working with, I think is the best way to tackle it.
Yeah. And I didn't want to ignore Bill's suggestion of the jazz
Oh
club
yes.
in Taipei.
Thanks,
I'm
Bill.
sure. I think he did give me that recommendation.
So this kind of brings me to a question I was going to ask. You participated in a panel at USITT called "How to Fail Successfully," and Jackson's question kind of segues into that a little bit. So I mean, without giving the whole full presentation, can you talk a little bit about what your I guess thesis of that idea was?
No, but because it was a panel included
Sure.
Dick Block and you know, there's a couple of people about it, but
Yeah,
I am really big on failure. I'm big on there's the door to our design lab at Wake. I have a sign on it and it says, "This is a safe place to fail, but only an endeavor to dare." So to me, you learn far more from your failures than your successes, and that's not an original thought, but I find it to be gospel truth. If you do something right the first time, you probably learn nothing from it. And this is really, and this continues to be true for me this long on, but it's something that I harp on with my students. It drives them nuts, especially because modern students are so and I don't know if it's because they've grown up being taught to tests and that there are right answers and wrong answers, and in the theater and in art there are no right answers and wrong answers. There are better choices sometimes,
right.
There are better processes, but try something, and if you might fail. I had a student who we were making this is not even for creating art, this was like a process, and we were making the giant hairspray can for the musical Hairspray.
Sure.
And we were covering a giant cardboard cylinder in muslin so that we could paint it. And I said, well, what I would do, and I said, I would do this, blah, blah, blah. And he said, oh, I wasn't going to do that. I was going to do it this way. And I said, oh, that might work. I mean, it wasn't going to work. I knew it wasn't going to work. But I said, oh, okay. I said, okay, well, I said, I would do it for this reason or whatever. And then I said, but go ahead and try it your way and see how it goes. And he just stopped and he looked at me and he goes, "You're setting me up, aren't you?" And I was like, no. And, but it was true. And I often try not to give those solutions sometimes too, especially in something like that, where say, hey, how do I do this this specific thing? And I might give them options, or I might just talk through and say, what do you think? And then I'll say, try that. And sometimes I know what the result's going to be, and sometimes I don't. And it's, when you're painting, if you could paint the thing perfectly the first time you even pick up the brush, I mean, God, nobody can do that. You got to learn how it sits on the paper and how what the water does to affect it, and how wrinkly it gets, and how crappy it looks halfway through, and how it gets better at the end. You just don't know all that stuff in the beginning, so you have to fail to get better. And that's true again for anything you do in your life. Don't be afraid to fail, because it's the only way you're going to learn.
Yeah. And I think I want to chat a little bit about that too. In that, I think failure doesn't always look like a spectacular failure where it's an obvious train wreck of a choice or spectacular collapse. Failure can also look like you looking back at something you've done and realize that there was a better way to do it. Right. Failure can also be hindsight in terms of oh, hey, after some time and space, I can see that this didn't work the way I wanted it to. And now I can see if I had done this, then this, it would have been better. And so
I have that on every bloody show.
Every show, right? So it seems a little bit like splitting hairs, but it's I want people and students to know that it's not just about doing something wrong and then learning from that horrible wrong thing. It's also about just continuing to constantly evaluate yourself in your own work. And
reflection
Yeah.
Evaluation. That's
Yeah.
the final part of the whole process is reflection and evaluation.
Yeah.
And luckily, God, we're so lucky to do what we do because it has deadlines. It has, and what we do has endings.
Right.
A friend of mine
Great
always
concept.
says, the nice thing about shows, they open. And it's true, right? We have these concrete things. And I love that about what we do, because then we also always get time to look back, reflect on it, and go, okay, what did I screw up? Or not even necessarily that dramatic, like you said, what would have been better? Even better if.
Right.
And so, I have that on every show.
So, couple things. Chloe has commented about how that you love failure and triumph, and it makes you a great teacher, which is very nice.
It also keeps my skin young. The tears of students.
Oh yeah,
it's great for the
tears. Yes. And Jackson's got a question. Do you think that 100% successful design project can exist in the real world, or is there something to be gleaned even from the greatest of triumphs? Jackson's got good questions.
Jackson's good. Honestly, I mean, but I don't think it's a terribly satisfying answer, because if there is possible to have 100% successful design, I've never done it. I've had stuff that I'm very pleased with, designs that I try not to be in love with my own work, especially during the process, because that'll screw you up quicker than anything. But it's always, there's always something you can do better. And it depends on what I'm working on too. Like, so I'm usually most satisfied with scenery and costumes. Lighting, I could play with cues, I could play with color, right. I could nitpick until the show closes if I didn't force myself to stop. So that's lighting. For some reason, I'm just always like, oh no, I don't like, so I don't think there is. And I think if you look at the big heavy hitters of design, of scenography and performance design, I think we could all probably pick stuff apart and be like, yeah, like that. And God knows they did. So
yeah, like I think that's all going to be in the eye of the beholder, right? Like from a personal point of view, I doubt you will ever be 100% satisfied with anything, because that's just the artist's way. There's always something you could have or wanted to do. There's always something. I mean, even on Broadway shows, things get cut, right? Like, so it's never going to be perfect for the creator. For the folks who are experiencing it for the first time, I think it is possible to have real true success, because they're getting what they're picking up what you're throwing down, and for them and for their point of view, I think that can be true. But I think from like the artist's point of view, I don't know. It seems unlikely.
Yeah. Thanks, Jackson. It's a great question.
It's a great question. It is. So speaking of like design choices, this is maybe a loaded question, but have you ever had an experience where what the director was asking of you was, you were sort of in a major disagreement about what the director was wanting versus what you were wanting to do?
A couple.
How did you manage that, I guess is maybe the better question.
Well, I find it better when the director can articulate, based on the play, especially based on what's on the story that's being told, based on characters, why we were disagreeing about this particular choice. And a couple of moments come to mind, and some are, some have different results. Like sometimes I got my way, and sometimes they got their way, although I don't look at it, I try not to look at it nearly as adversarial. But on King Lear, I had this architecture, and I wanted all the doors and window frames to be like patinated bronze, like green bronze. Yeah. And don't ask me why that was the case now. Then I had, I mean, I have an idea why, but it gets into the approach that we were taking to the play. And the
Right.
director was like, yeah, but this isn't working for me. I don't, this is, and to me, it was like the coolest part of the
Right.
thing. And she tried to explain it. And it just wasn't, I mean, I just was like, and finally, I'm like, okay, we'll do it this way. How about this? And I gave her another option and we went with that. And for a long time, I just thought that was the wrong choice. And then a couple of, after the show closed, or maybe mid-run or something, we were talking to a group about to a class about this show. And she said, oh, well, we blah, blah. And she explained it in a completely different way. I go, oh, okay, I get it. I still prefer my choice, but now I understand your choice, So,
Right.
And so she's really smart and clever, and for some reason the conversation just didn't get there.
Didn't get to the answer you needed to.
Yeah, and then I had another one where one of my very first collaborations with a director that I've worked with a number of times in Miami. The first time I worked with him, and I kind of gave him some, I can't remember what exactly it was about this play, and he's like, I just don't think my audience is going to get it, because it was a little, I don't want to say abstract because that's not right, but right. it was not so obvious and presentational.
Right.
And I said, let's trust him and see what happens. And he trusted me. And they did get it, and they did, or at least they certainly didn't react negatively to it.
Right.
So, and that was the start for us. That was the start of a really long collaborative relationship and I adore him to this day. And I haven't worked with him in a while, but
yeah, that's cool. So Bill is asking us about what are your thoughts on scenic projection?
Bill, I think that's an excellent question. But it's also a detailed question, like what, in what way. I've used projection. I love projection, actually. I enjoy all kinds of projection. I enjoy doing like shadow. I'm really big on translucency. I love to do shadow projection on the back of things, or revealing things through shadow. Because, if you think about it, the real first projection is the
right.
rabbit. But I have seen projection go too far as well. So I'm a big fan of projection. I wish I would love to design more with projection. So, I do it where I can. But I've also, a number of years ago, I saw a presentation at USATT about this show that it was just a big white thing. And they were doing projection mapping, and they mapped the whole thing, and like they were walking, and the scenery moved with them. And then, they got, and as I'm watching, I'm like, what, this is really cool, but this is not theater. This is a bloody video game. It just happens to have these, these people on there. It's like, it was not quite. So I do think it can be pushed too far. But at the same time, the stuff that is being done with it is amazing. So
yeah,
I think it's a great tool. I think like all tools, it can require restraint.
Yeah, my feeling is it needs to be motivated in some way. Like, okay, if you're going to do a completely projected space like that, then like, what is the textual reason? What in the text is supporting that idea? Like, if it fits with the concepts of the show, then sure, like I can go there. That sounds great to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a tool, and it's how you use it.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I'm big on. That's the thing, is I'm big on the design. I don't care about the tools. You know what I mean? Like, I want the design, and the tools will, with lighting. I know a lot of lighting designers are technophiles. They love the gadgets and stuff. I don't care. I really don't. I don't know what the newest gear is. I want to know what I want to do what I want to do. And if somebody goes, oh, look, here's this thing, it makes it easier to do. I'm like, all right, sweet. LEDs changed my dance lighting life, but they also brought a lot of challenges as well.
Yeah, it's a whole new thing to learn. DJ is asking, at what point did the director try to veto those doors from your earlier story? He says from early drawing, I hope.
Well, I don't know where I tell you what, we got as far as model pieces.
Okay.
So the whole walls were bronze, actually, and then the
that looks great.
trim was all patinaed and all that. And I, again, like I said, I try not to fall in love with my own work because because of this exact thing. And so, so we got to model pieces.
That's a good time to do it. Like
Something like that is not bad.
it's better than like it's painted in the space and you're like, this just isn't working for me.
Yeah, but there are those stories too.
Oh yeah.
Luckily, I don't have too many of those, but I've heard people repainting an entire set in one evening and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I mean, the projection question brings me to, well, we're getting close to being out of time, but so it seems like you're primarily working in traditional media yet these days, in terms of like drawing and painting. What are your thoughts on like digital rendering and modeling and those sorts of things?
It is the wave of the future, and it's going to swallow me, is what it is. I think
that's how I feel too.
Again, because I'm not a technophile,
Yeah.
I'm not. There's so many cool programs out there, and I just don't have the time to learn them. I have the ability. I'm not a Luddite. I'm not some old man who's I don't know what the equivalent of the blinking VCR 12 o'clock thing is anymore. But I just don't have the time. Like I'm comfortable with technology, but learning something like what's any of those 3D modeling and rendering and motion, it's just work. It's just time that I don't have. And so, but luckily, a lot of my students have embraced it. Or some of my students have embraced it. I had a student who just graduated this past year, who has taught herself SketchUp, which is one of the Google SketchUp, which is a free program, and it's fairly intuitive, I believe. I have downloaded SketchUp on every single laptop that I have gotten over the past 15 years or however long SketchUp's been around, and I have yet to like really dive into it. She took it and did it, her first thing that she did with it was quite good, but it looked like SketchUp in a way. And then the next thing she did was even better, and the next thing. So she's really embracing it. I guess it's kind of the equivalent to computer drafting also. Mm-hmm. I'm all in on computer drafting. And I have some of my past faculty professors and mentors who are like, oh no, I can draft by hand. I mean, not to call out any names, but it's just Kevin Rigdon was saying the other day about how he still drafts absolutely everything by hand, and how he thinks he's faster at hand than he is at CAD. I think he's a bloody liar. But I mean, revisions is where it comes in. Revisions and things that I can draw this much of this and then repeat the thing, and that would take me a lot longer by hand. But again, that was what we embraced, right, of our generation of leaning into CAD. And I have to teach that here because we don't have room for drafting tables to do hand drafting. But I also believe that I used to believe you needed to learn the hand stuff first, and I still make them do some hand stuff. But I also believe that certainly by the time I'm dead, they won't be touching it anymore. So they won't be touching it by next week.
I miss it. I don't do it anymore, but I miss it because I think it's more artful and more fun than doing it. I have
threatened to draft an entire show by hand again for like the last 10 years, and I have yet to do it because it's just time. It's because I really want to do it.
And it's also time for your TDs, like, because they then have to take your drawings and redraft them, and like,
that's right.
It adds time to them too, and so it's not 100% super fair. But all right, well, last question. So what would you say to students or others who are just getting started, who are interested in scenic design or scenography or other design? What one piece of advice would you give?
Oh my God, one piece of advice. I guess my piece of advice is to do it, to go get your hands dirty and do it. And I mean, like, whether you're still at school, once we're in non-COVID times, there are opportunities to do it. And I've never seen a theater that would turn away a volunteer, first of all.
For real.
So you can actually go and get your hands dirty. But then also once you graduate, go do it. Does it mean that you can go out and be like, hey, here's my portfolio and give me a job designing scenery? Maybe, actually, sometimes, but probably not. But you should, but go work in the field, and that comes from a place of privilege. Actually, I realize that because you got to pay bills, and you're going to have student loans and crap like that. But and this is actually my recommendation for anything is you've got to do it to see if that's what you want to do as well. And I mean, I saw a lot of people at my grad school who were undergrad students who went through and learned how to design scenery for the theater. And there's a whole bunch of them who don't do it anymore.
Or never even did. I've noticed that as well.
And so, because it's a hard job to do. And so you better make sure you want to do it. And that's true for any job you want to do, in my opinion. So I don't know if that's the best piece of advice, but on the spot, that's what I can come up with.
I think it's good advice. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Rob.
My pleasure.
It's great to have you. And thank you, audience and everybody, for joining us and watching with us tonight. And I hope you guys enjoyed.